Hey guys, welcome back to the Calvinist Contradiction, where we're going through another uh, part of our series of where is Calvinism in the opening narrative of the Bible. Now, last time, I think it was Monday, maybe we went through Genesis 37 and 38. 37 is a genealogy, so we didn't look into it, and that's because we're looking at the Bible as a narrative. And so, as a narrative, as a continuous story, we are looking at the Bible we start at Genesis 3, where the Calvinistic interpretation of uh, total inability, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance of the saints is rooted in. Okay. And so that's why we went back to Genesis 3 and we said, okay, where's this doctrine at in Genesis 3? Oh, it's not there. In 4, it's not there. We've gotten all the way up to Genesis 39 today, and we're reading it as a narrative. And so this is kind of a response to, and you guys can go and watch it yourself. A brother out there whose name is Basil, and he goes makes a video responding to mine, which is great. I love that. I totally support that because that's what this channel is for. But he jumps right into Romans 9. You know, every single Calvinist on the channel says, go to Romans 9, go to Romans 8, go to Ephesians 1, go to Exodus 10, go to Genesis 50. We say no, because we're reading it as a narrative. And so if you pick up the Bible, it tells one consecutive story from start to end, and that is about God's redemption of humanity. Of course, it tells the fall, why we need to be redeemed, how we're going to get redeemed, and then finally how we are redeemed. And so we're reading it as a narrative. And so this brother jumps on Basil and he goes right to Romans 9, and then he comes back because it's all about Esau becoming Edom. And he makes blatant statements like, it's clear in this text, which is a genealogy, that they are chosen for destruction and that they're, sinful people. Never says that in the text, albeit in the text that we're talking about, 37. Never says that in the text. And he goes on and he reads all these texts about how Edom and Esau, they don't let the Israelites pass through the land. They do all these things. And over, he, out of his own mouth, says, because of this, you will be destroyed. Because of this. And then he goes back to Romans 9 and reads back into the text that before the foundation of the world, you were chosen for destruction. You were not loved because he's hated. And he takes it literally, hate. God hates him, not God preferred. So, okay, which one does Jesus talk about? Hate your mother and father. If you don't hate your mother and father, it says in the command to love your mother and father. And so in the Bible, you have a Calvinistic contradictory God. And so he has to go back there and kind of clean all this up. That's not what we're doing here. We're reading the Bible as a narrative. And so we didn't get into, Isaiah, wherever he went, wherever the heck he went to lots of places in the Bible to come back and then read it back into the text. And we're saying, no, we do love the whole. This channel, we're reading it as a narrative because we want to see if these biblical authors are, supposing that they're Calvinists. They're rendering a Calvinistic interpretation as they're writing, which we haven't seen for 39 chapters here. So like this channel, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and pray about supporting my ministry over here in Asia Minor, where we're sharing the love of God with every man, woman, and child. On the field, as we've planted 2 churches, we've done a bunch of stuff, and so you can click the link in the description section to give to our 501c3 or to just give to our PayPal or whatever. And without further ado, click on the link in the comment or in the description section. We're going to jump into Genesis 39 here. And so after the things we talked about in 38, it says, and now Joseph. And so it goes on this thing about, I guess in the Calvinistic worldview, as we talked about, the, deviant God, because God's just a deviant monster, really, in Calvinism, because all pornography, all sexual rape, all depraved sexual things you can think in your mind, that's God doing it. Not God allowing it, not God giving a chance for, free will human beings to do depraved things. It's God in his depravity doing it for his own glory. So at the expense, the pornography that is made at the expense of the people who are making it, it's actually at their expense for God's glory in Calvinism, because he does meticulously controls all things, as unimaginable as it might seem to us, from the killings of Dennis Rader to the rape of young children, sexual abuse of young children. It's not God allowing it, it's God doing it. That's from Desiring God, John Piper's website. We quote it all the time. And so it says, nowhere does it say God's doing anything in any of these chapters. Go check it out. Chapter 37, 38. It doesn't say anything about that. And so he's been sold off into slavery, and now he's down in Egypt. And Potiphar and an Egyptian officer of the Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. That's why the Ishmaelite thing's in there. Basil out there is because it says the Ishmaelites come, and before they come, and it says they come and they take him. So who's the Ishmaelites? Who's Esau? Well, the Bible narrative, which is what we're doing here, says in 36 who these people are, because we have in 35 we have Jacob moves to Bethel, then in 36 we have Esau moves, and then we have the descendants of Esau, then we have Joseph's dream, and then we have the plot to kill Joseph where they sell him to the Ishmaelites. And in there it tells you, in 37 it tells you, or 36, I'm sorry, it tells you who the Ishmaelites are, so that in 37, you know who he's being sold to. See how this works? That the thing that comes before informs you about the thing that is after, because it's the Bible as a narrative. You're reading it and you're moving forward, not you go to the end and you read it back into the text like you did, Basil. You literally did. I couldn't ask for a better example of what we're fighting up against here. Now, let me make a responsive video straight to Romans 9, plug it back into Genesis 38, and that is where you get Calvinism in the text. Because you cannot get Calvinism from the text in the Bible as a narrative. Proven 39 times over now. It takes him down there. The Lord was with Joseph. So here we go. The Lord was with Joseph. That's what it says right here. So here's the ascribing of the Lord. Not that we have to meticulously see, okay, Judah sleeps with his daughter-in-law. That's from the Lord. That's God doing that. God he had a sexual itch that day. And so he uses, Judah to go down there and do this, because that's what it is. He meticulously does this for his own glory. Never says that in the text, but the rule is here to inform us what God does and what he doesn't do. The Bible doesn't make any sense in Calvinism. We talk about this all the time. It's just it doesn't do anything. It's not effective to accomplish anything in the Calvinistic worldview because of unconditional election. Unconditional is unconditional. Doesn't need the help of this Bible. This Bible is rendered mute. It can't do anything, which is a lie. We're going to see that here. It's just a bunch of bologna sausage. Trash heap dung theology is what Calvinism is. So we're asking you to flush it down the toilet where it belongs. Because here it tells us what the Lord's doing. We don't have to assume, we don't have to infer. It says the Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man, okay? And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and how the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant and made him overseer of his house, and all that he owned he put in his charge. So Calvinists out there who say dead man can't do anything. You take a Lazarus, not the right application of the text at all. It has nothing to do with salvation here. So you take the dead man with a salvific kind of connotation to it is actually the prodigal son. He's dead and now he's alive. How's he become alive? By placing his trust that his father will treat him better than him just perishing out in the wilderness. When he comes home, it's exactly what you guys take dead man, Lazarus, who's just dead. It's just an example of somebody who's dead who Jesus brings him back to life. He said, what can a dead man do except for just be dead until the calling of the Lord, until the, unconditional election of the Lord comes? Well, this Mr. Calvinist, Mrs. Calvinist, Potiphar, the dead man here, he's realizing that Joseph is being blessed by the Lord. That's literally what it says here. So your systematic is trash because you're making up stuff. And you're making up stuff because you're going into the text, you're going into the New Testament, you're grabbing it and you're bringing it back to the Old Testament. And we're saying, no, you don't need to do that because the Lord was with Joseph and he became a successful man. How does Potiphar know this? Because he realizes it. It doesn't say that the Lord made Potiphar come to this realization. It doesn't say anything. Now, Master saw. It ascribes to who? The master, seeing that his servant is blessed and that he puts more. So what can a dead man do here? Mr. Calvinist who has bologna sausage theology and you're just making stuff up as you go along? Well, he can recognize the blessing from the Lord, and he can actively, I would say out of his own free will, but it's not in the text. You can't say that. Although none of the stuff that you are saying is in the text, he can actively put more things into his hand and and be blessed. Be blessed even more vicariously. That's crazy. This is so against the Calvinistic systematic right here. It's almost hard to even come into words to say how to refute this. Because you guys say that, and we had this problem with like Esau and stuff like that, where I said, well, how's Esau recognizing he's been eternally damned and not chosen before the foundation of the world because he's been hated? Well, he recognized, he literally said, how did you become this blessed? When he comes, he gets all these gifts and stuff. Recognizes the Lord's blessing. This guy who's dead man Lazarus here, he's doing a bunch of stuff for a dead man, right? Recognizing, putting more into the guy's hands so he'll be blessed. Where's your answers for this, Basil? Don't go on some, big old rant. Don't go back to Romans 9 and then show us that that's the true interpretation of these texts. Please answer these questions that we're asking you. How's this dead man doing this? Nothing about the Lord here. And how do we know that it would say that the Lord was doing this? Because it literally says it 2 verses before. The Lord was with Joseph. So it could have said the Lord made Potiphar recognize this stuff. But it doesn't say it because Calvinism is false, fake, phony, trash, dung. Get rid of it. You're making stuff up. It came about that from the time he made him overseer, who? The Lord, before the foundation of the world, predestined him, decreed eternally? No, you're making that up. It says, it came about that from the time that he made him overseer. So Potiphar made him overseer in his house and all over that he owned, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house. Calvinists, you're done. This text is destroying your systematic like crazy. That the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. This dead man who puts Joseph into charge of all of his stuff is being blessed by the Lord. How is this happening? It doesn't say, again, that the Lord made him do any of this stuff. He recognizes this. The dead man recognizes. The dead man gives. The dead man receives. So he gets blessed even more. Thus, the Lord's blessing was upon all that he owned, in the house and in the field. Oh, this Egyptian hated before the foundation of the world, who can't do anything, he's such a worm. He's hated from his mother's womb so much that God blesses him, everything in his house and in his field. No. Bologna sausage theology. So he left everything he owned to Joseph in charge. And with him, there he did not concern himself with anything except for the food that he ate. So this guy's retired and he's living fat on the hog for sure. Now, but he's, hated before the foundation of the world, and God eternally decreed him in his mother's womb before he did anything right or wrong, that he wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Well, that's what some baloney sausage false theology teaches, but that's not what the biblical text taught right here. Now, Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and it came about after the events that his master's wife took with desire at Joseph, and she said, "Lay with me." So here again, we're going to hop into, narrative theology is what I should call it, where looks or is taken. It says looked with desire. That's exactly what Eve does. Looks with desire, and then now she wants to take. Right? We've always talked about that. That's how the biblical theology of sin is put forth. But guess what Mr. Calvinist says here? That this is really steps in the sexual perverse god of Calvinism, demon of Calvinism, and he's horny. He wants to get with, he wants to make something happen between Joseph and Potiphar's wife for his own glory, too. That's he wants us to do. So step in the rapist, step in the lying, deceiving God of Calvinism, and here we go again. The same thing we talked about in 38. Lie with me. This is an innuendo, right? A sexual innuendo about laying with her. So she's come cuddle with me in my bed. No, we know that that's not the true thing, but it doesn't say sex here. Just like it doesn't say free will of Potiphar about 3 verses above, that out of his own free will, he chooses to put all that he has into Joseph's hand because he recognizes the blessing of the Lord, and then he's blessed even more. So we know that that's true, and that's what happens. Well, here, lie with me. There's no free will in that at all either. We can decide that. We can render that. We can render the text that way. But here, lie with me, it doesn't say sex, but we can render it, it means sex as we proceed. But he refused, and he said to his master's wife, "Behold, with me here, my master does not concern anything with himself with anything in the house, and he has put all that he owns in my charge. There is no one greater in the house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. Now then, could I do this great evil and sin against God?" So here's another reference. Joseph is rendering doing this as sinning against God. As she spoke to Joseph day after day, he did not listen to her, to lie beside her or be with her. 2 innuendos and 2 euphemisms about going in and having sex with her. Again, doesn't say sex, just like it doesn't say free will, but we can render the text that way. To render it otherwise is just as ridiculous as the Calvinistic systematic. Now, it happened one day that he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men in the house was there inside. She caught him by his garment, saying, "Lay with me." And he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called to the men of the household and said, "See, he has brought in a Hebrew to us to make sport of us." Another sexual innuendo. "He came in to me to lie with me." Another sexual innuendo. "And I screamed. Then he heard that I raised my voice and screamed. He left his garment beside me and fled and went outside. So she left his garment beside her until his master came home. And then she spoke to him with these words: "The Hebrew slave whom you brought to us." This is came in to make sport. I raised my voice and screamed. He left his garment outside beside me and he fled outside. Okay, make sport with me. Another euphemism for having sex. We can render the text that way because that we know that's what's going on. But this is amazing, guys. When you read the Bible as narrative, in its context of, literature, one, but in the ancient Near Eastern context. Look at what we get here. When you dump, pardon the pun, when you dump the dunghill theology into the toilet and you flush it down and then you look at it as literature, look what you get here. You have desiring by looking, wanting, trying to take, and then what do we have here? And then the Hebrew slave, who you brought to us. Does this ring anything in anybody's ears? Hey, RL, look at what it says literally here see, when we ask you Calvinists to go back to Genesis 3, and you say, I can't do that. I got to go to Romans 9. I got to go to Ephesians 1. I got to go to whatever. I got to go somewhere else in the New Testament. But look what we keep doing. Look what I'm saying here. Look what it says. Here we go. This is Genesis 3. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was in her delight to her eyes. Is this not what we just read? And that the tree was desirable to make one wise. She took from its fruit and ate, and she also gave it to her husband with her, and he ate. And then look what it says right here. And he said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded you not to eat? And the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me from the tree, and I ate. Look at the wording that they're using there. Whom you brought to us. They are crafting the story around the Genesis 3 fall narrative. And they do this over and over and over and over. We showed you how they did this in 4, how they do this in chapter 11 of Genesis. So when we say that our theology of the depravity of man, of total depravity, if you want to, but not the same rendering as total inability of the Calvinistic system, that everybody will sin. The biblical author's response to this is, yeah, and how do we know that everybody sins? They keep on ascribing to, sinful narratives in the Bible, and they shape it around Genesis 3. And they use the same language, they use the same verbiage, so that when you see it happening, you can see it in the text. You can, it's a pattern. That's how they taught. They with repeating patterns, they were able to teach. So then Jude, what's his name? No, not Jude. James in the New Testament, he does the same thing because he's seen it so much in the Old Testament. And so see how I'm doing this, Basil? I'm going back to Genesis 3 and I'm saying these guys, the writer of Genesis 39 is drawing from that text to teach us about the sinfulness of man. And when we say you do that with your Calvinistic systematic, which is so plain and apparent and clear in the text that you can't see it unless you have the commentary of John Calvin or Matthew Henry or any one of these, guys who are spouting off bologna sausage in the bottom of their Bibles so that you will swallow this bitter pill of the demonic Calvinistic God and then do the same thing they do? Just keep rendering the New Testament back into the Old Testament? Or can you do like we're saying, where it all builds upon itself? That's why we're not, when we get to 37 and you're like, oh, you just skipped it, which I literally in that video said, in case a Calvinist like Basil, it does like 4 days later and says, I'm not skipping it because it has something Calvinistic in here. And then when he does his video, he says, here's where Calvinism is found in the text. Romans 9, literally opens up his Bible and reads from Romans 9 and then comes back there. And I say, no, we're skipping it right now because it's a genealogy that just tells about Esau. You can go read it yourself. And when we come across Esau in the future text, which we'll come back to this, just like I did in Genesis 3. But they put the cart before the horse. They say, we'll go into the New Testament and read it back because that's what everybody's did. No, that's not what the New Testament writers did. The New Testament writers, in case you forgot, and you probably have because you probably think that Paul's a Calvinist, for the Lord's sake, the New Testament writers' Bible was the Old Testament. And you guys forget about that. You say, well, we take the whole Bible as, well, so do we. And we're saying, but when you're reading it in context, one systematic can go back and prove their system from where it originates in Genesis 3. The other one says, we can't do that. Which one's bologna sausage? Which one's false? Which one's dung heap? Which one is trash from a demon? And which one is from God? Can't be any more clear, guys. RL, thank you for what you're saying. Yeah, Paul was a very poor Calvinist. I know, right? He really was. He can't even get his own system right in the one holy chapter, the holiness of holies of the Calvinistic systematic. Literally, I've talked with so many Calvinists. We just proved it. Please go watch Basil's video. I'm not making this up. That this man says this is Calvinism in Genesis 37 and turns to Romans 9. And I don't fault him because he's been brainwashed by his own system. So now when his master heard that the words of his wife, which she spoke to him saying, this is what your slave did to me, his anger burned. So Joseph's master took him and put him into jail, the place where the king's prisoner were confined. But when he was in jail, and he was there in jail, sorry. So nothing about that narrative right there says anything about God doing anything. It doesn't say that God was meticulously controlling Potiphar's wife. It doesn't say anything about God throwing him into jail. It doesn't say anything about God making Potiphar believe his sexually promiscuous wife who is detrimental to this guy's health and well-being for sure from what she's doing right here. But also it doesn't say that he controls him to believe her or any of this stuff. Anything that a Calvinist mumbo jumbo is telling you here to believe is just not in the text for a good reason, because the text doesn't ascribe sinful actions to God. It doesn't do that. It's not doing that here. But then it jumps back in and it says, but the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. This dead worm man who can't do anything because he's been unconditionally elected before the foundation of the world, because we're greater than everybody else. And so we know who's been elected or not, even though in the systematic proper, there's no assurance of faith, just like in Islam. It's all about good works to prove that you're still in the Calvinist cult. You have to prove that. You have to do good things, just like Islam. That's why Calvin in the Quran, the book that we've been working on, will be available to you as soon as possible. The chief jailer commits to Joseph charge of all the prisoners who were in the jail, so that whatever there was done, he was responsible for it. I'll comment on it, but I think it's apparently clear that dead does not mean dead, as the Calvinists render dead to be. What can a dead man do? Lazarus, he just lays there. He does nothing until God calls him out. Well, this dead man just, again, puts all that he's in charge of into the hands of Joseph, who he recognized as being blessed by the Lord. Let God be true, every man a liar. But see, that's the problem. Like I said, Calvinists don't believe that this Bible is can do anything. They don't believe that this can do anything to affect anything. We believe reading this, you can gain salvation. They don't believe that. So what kind of how can we hold them to the same accountability? How can we hold them to the same standard as we believe that this is the power of God unto salvation? This text, you can read this text, you can believe this text, you can do all that kind of stuff. And so you read this by knowing you can have life in his name. But they don't believe that. And so for them to just throw to the trash anything like here, like this dead man jailer who is um, actually he is realizing that Joseph is blessed by the Lord, so he puts stuff, he's actively putting stuff into Joseph's hands, and then he is trusting that Joseph is doing this. You don't give everything you have, especially if you're a jailer, into somebody else's hands unless you trust them. And so the chief jailer did not um, yeah. So the chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. Your systematic's gone, bro. Gone, my friend. You're literally place it in toilet, flush immediately. Because that just destroys your whole systematic right there. But we need to jump to Romans 9. No, you don't. Your systematic's been dead long ago. You proved it to us when we said, prove it out of Genesis 3. So can't do that. Oh, prove it out of Genesis 3 and 4. Can't do that. Oh, prove it out of 39 chapters of the Bible. You can't do that. And still our brother Basil just the other day, as proof, turns to Romans 9 and reads it back into 37. But this chief jailer, this dead man laying on a slab, he puts everything, supervises anything under Joseph's charge, everything under Joseph's charge. Why? Because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made to prosper. He realized that. He placed it in his charge, and he saw that everything that he did was blessed by the Lord because of Joseph's account. So vicariously through Joseph, this dead man's free will actions, him putting in there, is blessed and returned. Your systematic is trash. Your systematic can't hold water. It's untenable. That's why you are a Calvinist contradiction. That is why you cannot live according to what the Bible says. You have to change all the Bible. You have to even change what the Bible's meaning for. And so now this is over. I'll tell you, John 20:31, that these things are written, the things literally that we just read, that we can recognize the Lord's blessing on people, and we can place all of our stuff, our trust. That's what this guy does. He's trusting the Lord vicariously through Joseph, but he's still trusting the Lord, and we can trust in the Lord because John 20:31 says that these things are written so that you may know that Jesus is the Messiah, and that by believing you may have life in his name. What's up, Andrew? How's it going, brother? Love to hear from you on some of this stuff. I don't know if you were able to watch any of it, but if you want to throw anything in the comment section, we can talk about it right now. But that is how reading the Bible. I've said this. I should probably write a book on this too. Reading the Bible in context is the ultimate killer of all bad theology, because all bad theology gets their biblical theology from catechisms, from creeds, from confessions, from commentaries, all these extra biblical things. And we say, no, the biblical text is where we get biblical theology from. And then, we've heard this so much. Calvinism is so clear, so plain, so apparent in the text that you need John Calvin's commentaries to see it clearly. Wait. Show us in the text. No, you need to get John Calvin's commentaries. That's what they say. Oh, what's up, man? That's awesome. Perfect. Hope that you get to see some of this video because really, this is why we harp about reading the Bible in the ancient Near Eastern context, why we go on about the Bible as literature, reading the Bible in context, all these things, because they destroy false, fake narratives like Calvinism. Literally, it just dismantles it. And so you never hear Piper or any of the Sproul or these guys going on about right here, this dead man recognizing, placing their trust in what God's doing, because it will destroy their system. Their sheep would scatter. You strike the head of the false shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. They don't want that. Probably have all these guys, brainwashed. They have all these guys, they speak out of both sides of their mouths. So it's hard for these people. I totally understand this. They say God meticulously controls everything, even the rape of young children, but you're responsible for your own sin. You say, how's that possible? Well, the two wills of God. Well, there's one will of God that Jesus talked about. No, there's two. We figured this out. Well, how's love equal hate? Well, there's two loves. How does any of this? That's you need an excuse in Calvinism to get away with your trash theology. You just make up another thing. So let's see. Andrew says, I have a friend who's been spending time in commentaries, and it's confusing him. I told him to avoid commentaries and read the Bible straight through in John. Amen. And he said he's still young in the faith. Absolutely. I look at study Bibles when I'm teaching and stuff like that, but usually I never read commentaries. I can make my own commentaries. I can, confessions and those things, all these places, they all have a place. But when you I've seen so many of my Reformed friends that literally said the Reformed Bible right here, the Reformer's Bible. Why? Because you can't learn Reformed theology without extra help. You can't get Reformed theology from what we just taught there. You have to be introduced. You have to be indoctrinated. You have to be, brainwashed even into the cult, and then you'll see everything clearly. That's the weird thing about it, is that if you just read the Bible plain, especially if in narrative, especially in the ancient Near Eastern context, but that's extra stuff that you have to learn. Just read it like every other book. That's why I'm working on one of the main books I'm working on right now, alongside of the Quran and John Calvin, is a poem book about Calvinism, because we pick up the Bible, normal people, not Calvinists, sorry, Calvinists, but normal people pick up the Bible with reverence, with holiness. They believe that this is the only book that is inspired by God. Most people, Calvinists, you do not. You believe the Satanic Bible. You believe the manual for your remote control is just as inspired, because God meticulously controls his own glory, as this right here. So Madame Blavatsky's blasphemous book, Aleister Crowley's Thou Shall Be the Whole, or Thou Are the Whole of the Law, or whatever that book is, where it says that, and his disgusting commandments. I think his name is Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible. They're all inspired by God. They're all just as inspired by God under the Calvinistic systematic as this Holy Bible is. And so no wonder they render these texts like trash, because their view of Scripture is actually low. And these are the guys who are always going on about sola scriptura. It's like, the closet homosexual, kind of. Who's always talking about, I'm against homosexuality, I'm against all that, and then really they're the closet homosexual. That's what these closet Calvinists are like. Going on about sola scriptura, going on about context, when it's really these people who are destroying these ideas with their systematic, in the systematic that they believe. And so, sorry about that little rant right there, but yeah. So I would tell him to stay away from it. Look at the Bible, read the Bible, because the Bible is, from God. It's for God, but it's meant to be read like every other book. How do we know that? Because it's created with literature, and literally the purpose of literature is so that humans can understand it. We might be dumbed down, we may be stupefied these days, but literature and literary formats like satire, we're probably not as versed with that. That's my favorite one. There's satire in the Bible, but poems and prose and, psalms and examples, or parables, these things are all used because we can recognize them, and by recognizing them, apply them to our lives. But a lot of people just pick up the Bible and they suspend all of this when they do this, especially Calvinists. But they suspend all of this, and so they read it. And so the purpose of my refuting Calvinism in poems is to just read it like a poem, and then apply the same logic that you do Calvinism when you're reading the text to the poem, and it's going to destroy your systematic, because it's not in the Bible. So it loosens you up to be able to look at it in a different way. And so I can't wait to get these resources to you guys. I'm working as hard as I can. I have a book that's literally coming out on the 17th of September. It's not about Calvinism. It's not refuting Calvinism. It is a Advent devotional that reveals the roots of the Trinity in the Old Testament through a lot of stuff we've already talked about. And it will be made available on Amazon on the 17th of September. I am looking for people who would like to read it. I will give it to you for free, and so you can read it. It's about an hour read broken up into 5-second sections. And so if you'd like to read that, and then I'll give it away for free. I'm just asking for a review. And so I'll give it to you for free. It's done. It's formatted. It's everything. As long as you can leave me a review on Amazon, I would love to get that into your hands. That's the first book that's coming out. And then we'll have the Calvinist contradiction books coming out, hopefully at the end of this year into the beginning of next year. So Andrew says, I wish I could find a literal translation which had exactly 0 Calvinist translator contributing to it. Amen. Amen. I'm sure there's those people in the NIV. I always stick with the NIV. The best translation is the translation that you read. And I got that from my mentor, Michael Heiser. And I believe that full-heartedly. A translation can't help you unless you read it. And the NIV has been really easy for me to read. I'm in, multi-cultural, bilingual kind of context, and it just is helpful for everybody to kind of understand. So I use the NIV usually. What's this one? This is my go-to every day. This is the New American Standard Bible. I'm usually checking stuff on Blue Letter Bible and stuff like that. And so I wish so too. I don't trust Calvinists because almost every Calvinist I've ever met is like a closet Calvinist, says that he's not Calvinist when you press on him until then you really stick them. And then they're like, okay, I am a Calvinist. Literally, a lot of these guys don't even confess what they are, because if they did, they wouldn't have a church. It's just a lot of people would just buck this system off their backs because they don't read the commentaries, they don't read confessions, they don't read these things. And so currently my daily read is the NET. Cool. But I often refer to many different translations. NASB is what I grew up on. Awesome. I like the Holy Grail of the Calvinist Bible is the ESV, literally. ESV Reformers Bible is like, you're not going to get a more Calvinist Bible than that. I like the ESV a lot, actually, because it has the Dead Sea Scroll translations into there. I really, really like that translation. Again, it's going to come down to which one is the most easy for you. So I use the ESV a ton when I'm doing like study Bibles and stuff like that. Extremely sovereign version, exactly. And I have all sorts of stuff. I have one that's called the Hallelujah Bible, and it has like Yahweh and like the proper names in there. I really like that one, just because of like it's not a Hebrew roots movement Bible, but really my favorite Bible, my favorite 2 sources, which I have a lot in the book that's coming out, the devotional book, is the NIV Cultural Background Study Bible. It's super helpful for the ancient Near Eastern context of the Bible in the Greco-Roman context of the New Testament. And then the Faith Life Illustrated Study Bible, which my mentor, Dr. Heiser, he did the commentary throughout the Pentateuch. And so it has some really good notes. That's a free resource that you can get on your iPad or online through Faith Life. And it has just amazing visuals. It has great commentary, lots of links, articles, and stuff like that. And so, like I said, in that Advent devotional that'll be coming out on September 17th. I refer those 2 resources a lot to prove my point that God being revealed in the Old Testament, or the second power of Yahweh being revealed in the form of a man, is not my own interpretation, but that's steeped in scholarly articles and literature that proves that even from the Old Testament, there was a binary God, 2 powers in heaven, but they also saw it as a spirit as well. That's the roots of our Trinitarian doctrine. And so that's what that whole it's a tiny book. I think it's like 60 pages or something like that. But again, an Advent devotional is, and it helps those things. Lexham English Bible is not bad. Nope, the Lexham Bible, I'm pretty sure that's in my library for, what is it? It's not Faith Life. I'm getting that mixed up. What is that other one? Faith Life's like, oh, Logos. Yeah, I use that one. I think they have like a study Bible in there too. That's not that bad if I remember correctly. Again, I've just been using plain text like this. And again, where I'm at in Asia Minor, there's one translation that everybody uses, unless you're like extremely on the peripheral, and I've never met anybody reading this book because there's one translation literally, and everybody reads that translation. It's not the best translation, but everybody reads it. And then I think it was like 2012 or 13 or something like that, they came out with another version that took like Esau, which is Jesus, out of the Bible, any kind of references to the son, like those kind of things. They definitely changed the Bible. And then I've never met a Christian here that reads that. Every Christian that I know reads the same translation. And so, again, it's not the best one. We found things that are wrong with it, especially in like, ancient Near Eastern, the second power in heaven stuff, or like, what the stuff that we talked about in Genesis 15, where it says that God came to Abraham in a vision. Their translation, it says God came to Abraham as a voice, and so that's way different. In the original, it is a vision. You see things in a vision, and he sees the embodied Yahweh there. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but we still use it and we love it because there's only one, really. And I wrote a 70,000 page book in my host language on theology here, especially, looking at the Bible in an ancient Near Eastern context and those kind of things. And it really heavily hits on a lot of these things. And there was a good amount of things like that are not correct in the translation that everybody uses, but I guess that helps employ me for a little bit over here, hopefully, in what I'm doing. And so I'm going to hop off of here because it's pretty long. Again, if you want to, let me throw it in here if I can get it up real quick. If you want to reach out, I think it's on the page too, but if you want a free copy of that book, as long as you are willing to read it within 2 weeks and then write a review on Amazon, I can get that to you guys. And it's a fun little devotional book that teaches about the Trinitarian roots of the New Testament doctrine of the Trinity, roots that are found in the Old Testament. So love you guys. Andrew, take care, brother. Love you. And I will be talking with you guys soon for another episode of The Calvinist Contradiction. If you want a copy of that book, just email me. I'll put my email in the comment section now, and I'll add it to the what's it called? The description section. So love you guys. God bless you, brother. I'll talk to you guys soon.